Thanks for joining us on Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week, on the backdrop of the UK rolling out the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to thousands of citizens, we're checking on the progress in West Africa. The race for a vaccine is increasing, with countries such as the UK, Russia, even China preparing to or already inoculating millions of people. My guest this week is a co-chair, ECOWAS Task Force on Vaccines, Professor William Ampofo. Professor Ampofo is also Associate Professor and Head of Virology Department, Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research at the University of Ghana, Legon, Accra. We'll be talking to him in a bit, but first a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles. Let's begin here in Africa, as Nigeria on Saturday submitted its ratified AfCFTA agreement to the African Union. Nigeria's representative to the African Union, Ambassador Richards Adejola, on Saturday deposited the instrument of ratification of the agreement on behalf of the federal government. According to a statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the instrument was deposited for the advancement of intra-Africa trade and to deepen integration of the African continent. Receiving the paper on behalf of the African Union Commission was the AU Commissioner for Trade and Industry, Albert Muchanga. In other news, the federal government has assured Nigerian traders in Ghana that their challenges in the country will be addressed without delay and that the federal government is exploring all options outside of having to evacuate citizens from Ghana. The comments were made by the Minister of State at the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada, during a meeting with some members of the Nigerian Union of Traders Association in Ghana, NUTAG, led by the president of the umbrella body of the National Association of Nigerian Traders, Dr. Ken Ukoha, in Abuja. Present at the meeting was the chairman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, and a representative from the Ministry of Labour, among others. The United States government has removed all reciprocity fees for the non-immigrant visa categories for Nigeria. This was contained in a statement by the U.S. mission in Nigeria, which said the removal of the reciprocity fee matched the Nigerian government's removal of additional fees on U.S. citizens applying for Nigerian visas. However, all non-immigrant visa applicants are still required to pay the $160 non-refundable MRV fee at the time of application. Also, reciprocity fees paid prior to December 3, 2020 are not refundable. The directive takes effect from December 2nd. Finally, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Sunday resumed talks in a last-ditch attempt to bridge significant differences. The decision to revive the long-running talks after they stalled on Friday, December 4th, over three of the thorniest issues suggests both sides believe there is still some hope they can secure a deal governing almost $1 trillion of trade a year. It's not clear, though, whether either camp is ready to shift its position enough to allow the breakthrough Britain envisioned at the end of the year. The World Health Organization has been commending efforts by drug companies in researching vaccines that could help curb the coronavirus pandemic and save millions of lives around the world. It cautions, though, that having vaccines will not mark the end of the pandemic, but that collective effort is still needed. This week, apart from the UK, more countries are speeding up efforts to get vaccines to millions of people.
Good evening, everyone, from Geneva WHO headquarters.
The World Health Organization on Friday again commended the global vaccines race, but says it's concerned about the growing perception the pandemic has ended. It comes as Britain last Wednesday approved Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, raising hopes that the tide could soon turn against a virus that has killed nearly 1.5 million people and hit global economy.
Progress on vaccines gives us all a lift, and we can now start to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Again, I would like to say, vaccines do not equal zero COVID.
Britain is not the only country rolling out vaccines. On Saturday, Russia began distributing the Sputnik COVID-19 shot via 70 clinics to the most exposed groups, marking the government's first large-scale vaccination against the disease. President Vladimir Putin has ordered a nationwide voluntary vaccination program to begin this week, saying Russia would have produced 2 million vaccine doses within the next few days. In the United States, state health departments are preparing local hospitals for the first shipment of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, which could come as early as mid-December. Vaccines will be transported in dry ice-filled suitcase-sized containers that can only be opened twice a day and last a maximum of 2 weeks. The first shipment is expected to cover vaccinations of 3.2 million people, which is nowhere near enough for the 21 million U.S. healthcare workers. Brazil has received 1 million doses of a COVID-19 vaccine developed and produced by Chinese company Sinovac Biotech. 2 weeks ago, the state of Sao Paulo received its first shipment of 120,000 doses of the vaccine, which were already individually packed and ready for distribution. The government hopes to begin vaccinations in January, but the vaccine is yet to be approved by the Federal Health Agency for use on the general population. Finally, some 1,500 health workers in Chile are taking part in phase 3 clinical trials of the Oxford AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine, which is estimated to be tested on about 3,000 volunteers in the South American country. The trials by the University of Chile School of Medicine began on Thursday, December the 3rd, at the San Jose Hospital in Santiago, and has offered vaccines to health workers due to their high risk of infection.
Amidst all the talk about the rolling out of vaccines to populations in the West, it's easy to wonder what Africa is doing about this, and if it could be left out in providing inoculations for its populations. Countries in Africa have expressed interest in COVAX, a global initiative co-led by the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and the World Health Organization. The partners are set to be working with governments and manufacturers to procure enough vaccine doses to protect the most vulnerable populations on the continent. Though COVAX vaccines that have passed regulatory approval or the World Health Organization pre-qualification will be delivered equally to all participating countries, proportional to their populations, and health workers and vulnerable populations will be prioritized, and then vaccine availability will be expanded to cover additional priority populations and participating countries, so says the World Health Organization. But let's narrow it down to West Africa, where ECOWAS countries have been making efforts at fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to bring in co-chair ECOWAS Task Force on COVID-19, Professor William Ampofo. Professor Ampofo is also Associate Professor and Head of Virology Department, Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research at the University of Ghana, Legon, Accra. Professor Ampofo, thank you for joining me on Diplomatic Channel.
It's a pleasure.
I know that yourself, as well as the team at the ECOWAS, has been working hard on research for combating the coronavirus pandemic and working towards a vaccine. Where is the sub-region now as concerns vaccines research and procurement?
It's actually excellent timing for this talk, because in August, the 23rd Assembly of the ECOWAS Health Ministers adopted a resolution on COVID vaccines for West Africa to accelerate local production. So at the next session, I think it was the 58th ordinary session of the ECOWAS heads of state, they resolved that strategies for making ECOWAS vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines available should be explored. So the ministerial conference on COVID-19 on the 29th of September asked WAHO to create a task force of technical experts to develop strategies and explore the opportunities for actually making COVID-19 vaccines available in the ECOWAS region. So that's what my task force is setting about to do.
And all across the world, there are reports of testing, trialing, and now inoculations that are going on. Is Africa anywhere near this global vaccine race? And are we anywhere near, receiving any amount of vaccines? I know that some countries have already put down some funds towards acquiring vaccines for their populations. Where is this sub-region at with this?
So we don't have the production capacity in the sub-region. That is why the task force has been asked to look at what strategies will enable us to access, available COVID-19 vaccines that have already been developed and are being trialed and actually nearing production and approval in the developed countries.
I see a lot of African countries are looking towards COVAX, and COVAX, 54 African countries have expressed interest in COVAX, and that's a collaboration between Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and the World Health Organization. Is this a safety strategy by Africa, the fact that the continent is not exploring other options for vaccines?
Well, the African continent is exploring all options. That is why, as I said, the ECOWAS task force has been set up, not just in addition to looking at vaccines that will be available through COVAX, but also to look at what group pooled discussions with manufacturers, and also to look at actually pushing local vaccine manufacturing ahead and actually establishing that in our sub-region.
There are 46 African countries that are eligible for support from this financing instrument, the COVAX AMC. I don't see a list here already, and this is from the World Health Organization. Is Nigeria and Ghana leading this in any way?
It's an individual country sign up. So all the countries that were interested have received the WHO readiness tool. They have gone through the checklist and they are in the process of signing up for the facility. So that is an individual, country bilateral agreement with the COVAX facility. So what ECOWAS is looking at is that, can we as a region come up with a strategy where we will then approach, discuss, explore, partnerships with, vaccine manufacturers to secure additional, separate from the COVAX facility, vaccines for, member states, in addition to what member states may be individually doing. But, when you act and come as a group, you are able to, you have a better, there's more flexibility in price, and also volume is a critical issue. So this is something that we are looking at for the ECOWAS region, and that WAHO is spearheading.
China has been, Africa's friend, especially here in West Africa anyway, for a while now, helping with infrastructure development and so on. Is the sub-region also looking towards China for vaccine development?
Well, I know that China, there have been some Chinese companies that have spoken to some individual African countries. We have noted this in our discussions at WAHO, in the WAHO task force. And so it depends on what package, is offered. And also the most important for vaccine use is the regulatory framework. And there's also the ABAREF, the African Vaccine Regulatory Forum, which is also, there's also an offshoot in the ECOWAS region, and it will be up to the regulators to look at the available vaccines and advise countries accordingly, and also the sub-region. So the regulators are part of our task force, and we expect them to look at what will be the best product, and then we can negotiate the best price for our people.
There's been a lot of skepticism about taking vaccines. I mean, some people around the world really do not like the idea of injecting chemicals into their bodies. And there's also been some conspiracy theories about those vaccines raising certain concerns in certain parts of the world. Some leaders have said, look, if this vaccine does get here, we will be the first people to take it. But then health workers, those in the front lines, are expected to be the first people to receive those vaccines. If it boils down to giving to the population, would you be one of the first people? Would you offer yourself as one of the first few people to be the first recipients of a vaccine here in Africa?
I mean, if my safety regulators assure me that the vaccine is safe, when I'm a virologist, so I would expect that all the available information on the vaccine, and also look at us in West Africa. In Senegal, we actually have a facility that has produced yellow fever for several years. It's been one of the major producers of yellow fever vaccine. And you do know that yellow fever is an issue. There's actually an outbreak in a few countries in West Africa currently. So vaccines are the best tool for us against viruses because they enable us from childbirth to be protected against these dangerous pathogens. So yes, when the experts say that the vaccines are safe, that would be the best way to go. We know that there's been a lot of vaccine skepticism. There's the anti-vax group that are always looking and peddling conspiracy theories. But look at the science. Look at the way we have protected the people from, using the vaccine against viruses, against measles. We're on the verge of eradicating polio. Smallpox has been eradicated. So it's also good to balance the naysayers with the evidence that vaccines have been such a tremendous tool for public health.
But would it be safe, Professor Ampofo, would it be safe to use vaccines from Western countries, knowing our unique DNA and scientific and biological makeup here in Africa? Would it be safe to use vaccines from that part of the world on people here? Or would it be much better to research and develop vaccines here in Africa for Africans?
We've already been using vaccines developed elsewhere for ages. That's the point I tried to make in referring to yellow fever. We have used all the vaccines that we currently make up our expanded program of immunization come from elsewhere. None of them are made in Africa, apart from yellow fever. So I think that the discussion or the debate about safety of vaccines should look at our existing programs and reassure people that they've been taking vaccines. We've used vaccines, and these vaccines, before we use them, have been checked, cross-checked, and asserted to be safe. So this is something that I understand the anxiety, I understand the fears, but I'd like to assure our people that we will do our best to ensure that the vaccine that is approved for use is indeed safe. Yes, Africans have a different genetic makeup. If you look at the genetic composition of individuals across the world, you find some variations as well. But the viruses affect us all the same way. I mean, maybe we've had fewer mortality, we've had less mortality in Africa, but people have died from the COVID-19 virus, just like it has killed people elsewhere. So we need to understand that vaccines are truly a very important tool to protect against these viruses for which there is no available cure currently.
And speaking about the disease, according to the ECOWAS Center for Surveillance and Disease Control, as at November 22nd, there were 201,614 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the sub-region, 2,842 deaths, and a recovery rate of 94.2%. We talked about how unique sometimes the DNA and the genetic makeup of Africans are, and that's pretty high because there were concerns at the start of this pandemic how Africa would respond, to and would receive the pandemic. Agencies and organizations are marveled as to how the continent is surviving the coronavirus. What would you attribute that to?
We're still looking, and a couple of studies ongoing, not just in my country, but across West Africa. It's quite difficult because it's a new virus, and you need a lot of evidence over a significant period of time to come up with any how do I say, acceptable, conclusions. And we're human beings, so you cannot use ourselves as experiments, guinea pigs. So what we have, there's been thinking that probably the disease burden from various pathogens, and we do have these coronaviruses. They're human coronaviruses. They have been around for some time. They do not seem to cause significant disease, mild disease outcomes in us in Africa. These respiratory viruses, in winter you have severe mortality and death from flu. We have already seen it in the past from when the white man first came to Gold Coast, came to West Africa. Then we had reports of the pandemic flu at that time, but we seem to be suffer less severe effects from respiratory viruses. But note that when you do get these viruses and you have secondary infections of pneumonia, it does lead to death. And so our lower rates are actually not surprising. It was the fear that our hospital healthcare system would be overwhelmed by a large number of cases requiring intensive care. And that has not happened so far, and we're very grateful for that. We will keep exploring and looking for those scientific reasons, and as we understand better the science behind it, will probably help us as we move forward to develop our own vaccines that are better suited to our part of the world.
And just before you go, Professor Ampofo, because I can see you're outside, and you had told me earlier you're playing a game of golf, which I'm hoping you're winning.
Exercise.
Right. But just very briefly, are there vaccine trials taking place on the continent, and where are they taking place? So last we heard, South Africa was participating in trialing one of the vaccines, the one being developed by Oxford University in the UK.
So actually, that's a very important point. That's one of the things that the ECOWAS task force has reached out to countries to provide an update on vaccine trials, on their readiness for the COVAX facility and their plans. And the countries have been asked to share this with the WAHO task force so that we can understand clearly the current status in the sub-region and then give the best advice to the heads of state accordingly. There are also the efforts from the African Union. Actually, next week there's going to be, I think it's the December 14th or 15th. I'll share that date with you later on, offline. There's going to be a conference organized to update us on the efforts that the Africa CDC is making for vaccine access and research and development as well. So yes, there are a couple of trials that are taking place. I know I've heard about the one in South Africa. There's also, I think, one in Senegal, and there are a couple of collaborations between some companies or some academic institutions with groups abroad. We will get all the data in the task force and share that appropriately.
Professor William Ampofo, thank you again for speaking with me on Diplomatic Channel and explaining where we're at with vaccine development and research. I wish you a wonderful day and a successful data gathering and research as we continue to fight this pandemic.
I'm very grateful for the chance to talk about vaccines, and especially we need a lot of support to actually be able to start manufacturing vaccines in Africa and even in West Africa. And this is something that I'm glad the heads of state have identified as a critical and important activity to fully support going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the end, wearing of face masks, washing of hands, all of the protocols, COVID-19 protocols still need to be observed. Professor Ampofo, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is where we end the program this week. Thank you for watching. Let us know what you think. The addresses to reach us on are on your screen. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Thanks again.